don't think consumers differentiate between 85, 95 and 90. People only differentiate between 0 and 100.
At the top, there's only room for one, right?
I believe in India, 80% of celebrity usage in advertising that I see is not thought.
Creating is easy. What to create is $1 million question.
Hi, you're listening to Marketing with Vani, in which I speak to marketing gurus. Together we decode how marketing works in the real world to grow your business. Do you know the difference between brands that last, brands that you admire, versus brands that come and go or don't make an impression on you? In today's episode, we will discuss what it takes to create an iconic brand like Coke, Pepsi, Apple, Colgate, or Kurkure. The starting secret to building a strong brand is what we call a brand book. We have 3 huge stalwarts explaining the what, why, and how of the brand book. Listen on to my conversation with Bobby Pawar, Chairman Havas Group, one of India's top advertising agencies, Kaushik Prasad, who was heading consumer marketing for Ford India, and Subhash, CEO, BBH and Publicis, also Chairman ASCII. We'll start with, you remember the last discussion we had with the IIM kids, and at that time we were talking about whether brand consistency means monotony.
A lot of times people sort of mistake consistency in the sense of, the logo should always be right, and then, the format should always be the same. That's the photocopy version of consistency, right? That, especially in today's, always on or pretty much mostly engaged kind of world that we live in. If you do that, you're going to be boring, right? The consistency comes from your visual grammar and your tone.
So you talked about consistency as being consistent visual grammar. It must have the same tone of voice. It must have the same values that the brand stands for consistently. And do you think there's also merit in doing a brand book? Like when I was a brand manager, we used to be obsessive about it. And then, of course, I spent many years at Unilever. And Unilever can be fairly anal about it. We had a brand book, for example, especially on international brands, like the one that we had on Dove or on Lipton. There was absolutely everything very, very regimentally dictated in, whether it was for a print ad or even for any other ad, if we did a 30-second TVC. And I remember again, now that I'm talking to you, in my early days at Leo Burnett, when we used to do campaigns for Coke, we used to write shot-by-shot objectives for every shot. When we used to write the script, and then the script would be handed over to the client servicing team, and we used to be sitting and racking our heads and be writing shot-by-shot objectives and be debating amongst ourselves on how will the brand come alive in this shot.
My view on brand books is this, right? Most brand books are built to constrain, right? Hey, this is draw the borders around a brand, right? I think for any great idea for a brand, I think it needs to have a tension. So to me, I think great brand books do have that tension. They constrain and they liberate. We must be mindful of designing both how it looks as well as how it speaks to that effect.
But would you agree that having a brand book greatly helps to guide creative on what the brand is about? Like if I had to brief creative, let's say there is a new creative resource on the account and I'm struggling to explain what this brand is about.
You know what, Vani, you're dead on right. And especially now, at these times, when a brand is touched by multiple creators, the necessity of the brand book is that much greater, right? The thing is that a lot of people don't do it simply because it requires a lot of rigor and discipline to do it. You have to make choices, and choices are hard, right? A lot of people and marketing folks are people, they can't give up things. And therein lies the problem. Now also, it has to say, like I said, it has to constrain and liberate. So when people look at this thing, is that they want the 10 commandments, right? Now, the 10 commandments tell you what not to do. But where's the inspiration in that, right? This is where you could go, right? I mean, it's not just me, the planners involved and all of that, and we're mindful because eventually we'll have to create the stuff, right? Is that there's enough meat in that, right? You need the bone, but you also need the meat.
Yes. And I can tell you from personal experience, including brands that I have worked on, brands that are over 20 years old, we didn't have a brand book. And what the brand was about was merely passed on from planner to planner or from brand manager to brand manager. Or you looked at just past advertising and sort of surmised in your head what this brand is about. And therefore, every discussion on every creative would sometimes be very, very fractious on, is this on brand? Is this not on brand? Do we do these things? Do we not do these things? Because we just didn't have it documented anywhere. It was open to interpretation by everyone.
Absolutely. I'll tell you one thing, right? Let's just look at the oral history. Oral history is inaccurate because it changes with every person that tells the tale, right? Which is why it is important to codify things. I don't call it the brand Bible, but it's the codification of things, right? The codification of values, the codification of the tone, the codification of the visual. The whole thing is, okay, as the brand evolves, what are the tweaks you make to it, right? The thing is, what happens is that people sometimes believe that, okay, I set certain things in stone. Well, where's the evolution, right? The evolution doesn't have to happen from the soul of the brand. It's about how you interpret it in the current cultural context, right? The context keeps on changing, therefore the soul keeps on evolving.
Absolutely. So this bit on the current cultural context, what you just spoke about, this is often misunderstood. I have worked with clients where I have pushed for the need for a creation of a brand book. And often there is hesitation on the other side where the feeling is, oh, if we were to code everything, then we are going to severely limit creative and we would make it very, very monotonous. How are we going to give the brand any breathing room for creativity? So the question on the table raised by several clients, I've had this situation where they'd say, oh, but wouldn't it become monotonous? How would I, if we were to have a brand book, if we were to lay down everything, then brand consistency might actually lead to a lot of monotony.
So, it depends on how, in a sense, prescriptive your brand book is, right? If Nike doesn't have a font, but they've defined what my visual language should be, right?
Yes, fantastic.
So then I know, okay, I know when to use a self font and when to use this thing. Nike will never use Comic Sans. I haven't ever seen them use script. Yeah. If you stand for nothing, you'll fall for everything. And like I said, brand book is not for the faint of heart. It just isn't, right? It means you have to give up something. And the thing is, I mean, we live in transient age, right? The average shelf life of a CMO is what? A couple of years, 3 years, whatever. So when the custodianship of the brand changes hands, what are you losing in the process?
Absolutely. You don't know what you're losing because whatever the brand was in that particular man or woman's head, and this person is now gone. So yeah, with that, it's a free for all. Absolutely. And the other bit, like you were saying, that a brand book isn't for the faint of heart. I often say that actually the monotony is more in our heads. It's not in consumers' minds. There are brands, there are ads which I can see over and over again, and I'm still not fatigued. I'm happy to see, including Unilever and P&G ads, which tend to be very, very templated, so to speak. But it's not as though we're not entertained by those ads or that we don't know. What is the purpose of a brand book finally? It helps muscle memory. At the end of the day, in this really, really cluttered world, if I see an ad and I say, what a lovely story, such a touching story, it made me smile or it made me cry. पर वो याद नहीं आ रहा, पता नहीं वो कौन सा ब्रांड था वो. And then what a colossal waste of money it is for the advertiser. If the consumer response were just that lovely ad, but I can't remember the name of the brand. I don't know which brand was it. I can't remember. So, like you said, the monotony is more in the minds of the guys who make the ads, because it's an opportunity to strut, both for the creative agency as well as for the clients to be able to. And have you ever felt as an ad maker yourself, Bobby, that if I were to have a brand book, or if I were to work on the very, very typical PNG Unilever brands, I'd be limiting the opportunity to enter big awards?
See, you have to pick and choose your battles. PNG is now doing 20, 15 second, 20 second. Maybe not there, but you can do like a big engagement idea in digital, right? What purpose are you using your brand book for? It's just a lot of people start with the wrong idea in their head. Is they think the brand book is there to constrain. But if you say, it needs to do both. This constraint liberation, well, it opens up a lot of possibilities. Now, if you take a look at Dove, right? Traditional work is real people talking about their skin issues and how Dove benefited them. But one of the biggest pieces of thing they did was the real beauty campaign, which happened online. And that is huge. I mean, it just ran into hundreds of millions of people across the world engaged with it. I mean, and sometimes the most hard sell piece may not give you that freedom. But now what they did was take the soul of the brand, found an insight that magnified it.
Bobby talked about how a brand book must both constrain and liberate. My next guest on this episode is Kaushik Prasad, and he writes a blog called 30ml Musings. You must check it out. One of the things he writes about in that blog is called the pursuit of the sameness. In the next few minutes, Kaushik is going to talk about the science behind the pursuit of sameness, which we also call the brand book.
Yeah. So there's enough literature about distinctive brand assets, right? Which could be color, logo, type, smell, all of that, all those elements. And all of this is really linked to the science of how the human brain functions and how memories are formed. And quite frankly, there is science which says that if you strengthen and build distinctive brand assets, it makes recognition of the brand easier. And that obviously has an impact on purchase and what is termed as mental availability, right? So the pursuit of sameness is really about strengthening the distinctive brand assets. Is to strengthen them, is to strengthen the memory structures and minds of consumers. As simple as that, right? How you communicate, how you do that would change over time. On my blog, you would find an article, the same one that you're quoting, talks about Coca-Cola, which is more than 120, 150 years old, right? And the assets that they've developed around the brands are instantly recognizable. So the whole effort really is about building that. And marketers, unfortunately, get bored of their own work. Honestly, we are in the service of the business. It is not a creative pursuit. If it were a creative pursuit, please go and pursue art. But we are in service of the brand's business. We are in the service of growing revenue. We are strengthening the brand for future revenues, right? So when somebody says, I want to change, I'm bored of my advertising, and that's what happens. Marketers get bored of their own advertising. But the science is against it. The science is for repetition and keep repeating so that memory structures are formed, and that aids mental availability, and that aids purchase. As simple as that.
Fantastic. So you're saying do it not because you are bored. If you want to win awards and do something creative, please go, become a creative artist for art's sake. But if you want to deliver business, understand that delivering consistent assets is what gets registered in people's minds, and that's how they buy. That's how you will grow your revenue. So do it for the business. Next, I have Subhash Kamath, and he's given case studies from his own advertising years on how the brand book was used to inspire great creative ideas, how each was consistent in essence, yet reinvented for changing times. Listen to his fantastic stories. You and I from the advertising world, so we know what a brand book is like and the value of that. Can you just talk to me a little more about that? Do you believe strong brands are built on strong, consistent codes? And what is the value of that?
Oh, absolutely. I have grown in a school of advertising and marketing where consistency is extremely important in building a brand narrative. One of the my favorite examples is from BBH, which I've worked on as well passionately in India, is the Keep Walking case for Johnny Walker, which I think was a campaign that started by BBH in London, ran across the world, and it perhaps ran for, if I'm not mistaken, 17 years or something like that, or 15 years. Or, for example, Audi's Vorsprung technique, which was created by BBH 34 years ago and still remains the campaign platform across the world for the brand Audi. Or for that matter, the Axe effect, which ran for about 18 years or something like that. So these are all cases where consistent brand codes have been thought through and never diluted. And yet it has never led to boredom because the brand, the way it's constructed, is so creatively fertile that you can create different stories over the years and keep it refreshed. So you'll never feel bored.
So tell me a little more about this itself. You're saying this very passionately, that the brand stories are refreshed. One would never feel bored. Have you ever felt that the brand managers or that the creative team feels, oh, ab ye same cheese, the Axe effect, yet again we will have a man, who will spray out of this can and there will be a whole horde of women chasing him. Yet again, we're going to do the same thing. Have you ever felt this sense of, oh gosh, the same thing yet again?
It's very, very interesting you bring up these examples. So let me talk a bit about Johnny Walker and then to illustrate my point, and then I'll come to Axe, right?
Lovely.
In Johnny Walker, the strategic platform was personal progress. All right. The reason for that, which was when it was first created as a strategy, was that the rest of the Scotch world were just showing trappings of success in some form or the other. So a typical Scotch commercial in those days, anywhere in the world, would be a very good-looking man getting into a very good-looking car with a very good-looking woman by his side, going into a very good-looking mansion or a conference room, and he would then be seen with a Scotch in his hand. So that's the classic, what I call the sea of sameness that was there in the whiskey world. So every brand was trying to just portray some symbol of success, that successful people drink this premium Scotch. And you don't realize when your diligence of following category codes start to become category cliches.
Wow, that is a fantastic statement.
And that's a trap. I mean, you worked in FMCG for a long time, right? How many hair brands have shown a graphic of a glow going from the root of the hair to the tip?
We used to call it the blanket hair shot.
Or for that matter, skincare, something going into the skin and arrows going into the skin.
Correct.
Or for that matter, dental care,
Correct.
where there are kitanus in the gums and this thing. And then, now a lot of this at one point of time were created to give shortcut of messaging to the consumer.
Yes.
So one person did it, it was successful. Then another brand said, hey, if he's doing it, even I should also do it. Then it became a category code that, oh my God, where is my product window? It became a code that without a product window, how can you have a commercial without a product window? So what happens is that after a point of time, so many brands in all these categories that I mentioned, everybody does the same thing. And then what you end up is what is called the sea of sameness. I often do this for many of my clients, that I take a lot of clips across the category brands. And I take out all the logos and I just make an audiovisual using clips from all their commercials. And I ask my client, can you tell me which of these are your competitors and which are yours? And in many cases, he can't differentiate. So coming back to my discussion on Johnny Walker, every Scotch brand in the world was trying to show some kinds of trappings of success, including Johnny Walker. When BBH started working on it in London, and I read through that case, it's available if you want, I can send it to you. It won the IPA Effectiveness Award for one of the best strategies, and I think it's my gold standard in strategic planning by Nick Kendall, who's a good friend of mine, who was our global planning head that time, brilliant man. And what they did was they realized that the younger whiskey consumer, let's say everybody is showing people who at 45 plus, who are successful, right? But your large amount of whiskey consumption also is happening from 25 to 40, the younger lot, right? The younger consumers, the life value was not about success for them. Success was very far away. For them, it was about how are we progressing? What's our progress in life?
Very nice.
Right? What is my next thing that I'm going to do? How am I going to overcome failure? How do I reach the next level in my career? So personal progress was a bigger value than success, which perhaps their fathers would have been looking at. All right? So if the whole world in the sea of sameness was looking at success, we said, why don't we look at progress? So instead of focusing on the destination, let's focus on the journey. And that's how we differentiate. That's our philosophy of brand planning at BBH. So that's how personal progress. Now, once you have personal progress as a platform, and you have an incredible creative expression called keep walking. It's one of those once in a lifetime expression that no other brand can ever use now. It is so Johnny Walker, keep walking, right? With the walking man as the symbol and everything. And keep walking stands for personal progress. Now, if you look at these two, so what are the two constants? Personal progress is what I'm clearly going to be focusing on. Keep walking is my expression of it. Imagine the number of stories. If you take a look at the Johnny Walker advertising over the last 15 years when Keep Walking was there, you'll realize there are multiple aspects of personal progress that you could tell beautiful stories on.
And tell me something, Subhash, in the agency, did nobody have this bright idea and say, keep walking ko keep running kar do, ab keep jogging kar do, ab keep flying kar do, ya, keep parachuting kar do. Nobody say, ab now it's time to reinvent, ab keep walking bahut ho gaya, ab kuch aur karte hain.
I think it happened as long as it was resonating and relevant to the consumer, then you protect it. If it is no longer meaning anything to the consumer, and I'll come to an example again soon after this. If it's no longer important for the consumer, then you change it. So I think Keep Walking lasted for an amazing number of years.
What is important to the consumer is finally a question of which is the strongest, more convincing voice in the room. I'm saying one could have always changed it from keep walking to, how about keep running or keep moving or keep doing or keep dreaming. But you didn't.
Maybe that was considered. I don't know. I wish I was a fly in the room listening to that conversation. But even so, from an expression perspective, Keep Walking, and for your brand name, Johnny Walker, I wouldn't change the word walking at all. I would add many different... See, Keep Walking is not physical walking. Keep walking in life is about moving ahead, and that's what personal progress is. So one of the best, most beautiful commercials I remember, there were a lot of symbolic ones like fish. I don't know whether you've seen that commercial. Brilliant. About how human beings evolved from a fish to how did it become a man. It's an amazing commercial, right? Everything under the sun. But my favorite Keep Walking commercial is one that they did with Roberto Baggio, the footballer. They show him, actually, he became the shame of a nation when he missed a penalty kick in a World Cup in a very critical match for Italy, and that lost them the cup. And he was ridiculed in his entire country. And he was a brilliant footballer. The next World Cup, he again got the penalty and he scored. And he won it for the country. And that story is Keep Walking. So Keep Walking is not only about success. It's about even if you fall down, how do you get up and continue? So these kind of emotional values worked brilliantly with the consumer. And as long as it is resonating with the consumer, you don't need to change that. You just need to find newer stories to tell.
I hope you liked my show. And if you did, please do consider subscribing. I also have a YouTube channel by the same name, Marketing by Vani. Please do check that out too. Thank you.
How badly could you screw up one line? Okay.
So I did screw up. My YouTube channel is called Marketing with Vani, the same name as this podcast.